map here, Hayes and Tilden are in a tie. So Samuel Tilden, Rutherford B. Hayes, tie. 185 electoral votes, 184 electoral votes. No one gets the majority of the votes. So no one gets to be president. How do we decide? Well, it's going to go to Congress, and there's kind of a bunch of different things that will get worked out if you're reading the actual rules. But ultimately, instead of following the rules, and this typically has been the way it's been decided in the past, when you've got these ties, it's like, well, here's how we actually decide the tie. Well, actually, what happens is everyone gets together in a smoke-filled back room, and deals are made, and they come out and say, well, this guy's the president. Wait a second. Isn't there an actual process for you to decide who gets to be the president when there's a tie? And they say, yeah, and it's called, we go into a smoke-filled back room, and we work out a bunch of secret deals, and then we come out of the back room and say, this guy's going to be our president. Well, that doesn't seem like what's written in the Constitution. Yeah, but that's the way it happens. So there's a tie in the Compromise of 1877. Look, Hayes, the Republican, gets to be president. Here's the deal. We'll let the Republican be president. So what do the Democrats get in return? The Democrats, in return, get the removal of the military from the South. So Republicans, you can have the president, just take your military out of the South. That's the deal. Even though we know our guy, our Democrat, probably could be president. But I tell you what, you can have the presidency, you can have the White House for 4 years, get the military out of here, end the military occupation, end Reconstruction. Now, your typical version of U.S. history is going to tell you, racism, this is racism, it's racism. And sure, racism is always going to be a variable in these complex decisions, in these complex compromises. To act like it is not is silly. But then to act like it is the only reason that this was just purely an act of racism, purely an act of not caring about the minorities in the South, that's not true. Is it a part of it? Yes. But we have to avoid this idea that we can just, this is the worst one of all. We always lean on this. We're like, oh, this is pretty complicated. How are we going to ever explain all these different, I would just say it's racism. Okay, cool. All right, great. On to the next lesson. Unfortunately, you can see a lot of your social studies courses do this, where, oh boy, this is a really complicated issue, and it's so complicated that he has trouble saying complicated. This is a very complicated issue that's going to take probably 2 weeks to really go through all of the evidence, and even at the end of 2 weeks of exploring all the evidence, there really isn't one factor, and that's just going to confuse the students. What do? I got an idea. We can do it all in 1 day. Oh, wow, we can do this all in 1 day? How do we do it? Tell me, please. Well, just say it was racism. Oh, brilliant! And that's a shame, because racism is a big part, but we conflate this idea way too often and make it a bigger factor than what it needs to be, and then it just kind of seeps into every single issue. Yes, racism is a part of this, but the other big part, we talked about this in the video yesterday with Reconstruction, it's that the Republicans, they took this deal because Reconstruction had failed, because Reconstruction was poorly run by them, because of their unconstrained vision, which we'll talk about in the next video. They failed. They were willing to abandon. They were willing to quit. And now they were given the opportunity to exit. They had an exit strategy now, and they took that exit strategy. Sure, racism was a part of that. But remember, the people that took this exit strategy were probably the most anti-racist politicians maybe in the history of our country. Remember that. The people that are saying, oh, this is a racist deal, the people that took this deal may have been the most fervently anti-racist leaders, the radical Republicans. They took this deal. So that doesn't make sense that it would be straight racism, because they are probably the most angelic, honorable people there have been in office. Too extreme, honestly, too dogmatic, and that was what caused some of the problems. And we'll talk about those problems in the next video. I know the shades were on because this was going to be the last video, but guess what? As always is the case, we're going to have to do two.